Hello and welcome to everyone out in the garden. Welcome to our very first video conversation, what we hope will be the first of many. The garden is just about a month old, and we're so thankful that all of you guys have been with us on this journey so far. And as we continue to grow the garden, we want to bring in other elements like this video. So again, we're hoping this will be the first of many conversations that we can bring to you through video format. But since this is the first one, we wanted to really try to focus in on sort of offer a primer on who we are, what our vision for the garden is, and sort of how we got here. So that's what we'll be talking about today. So first, let's just do some quick introductions. In the file section of the group page, there are some more in-depth bios, but we wanted to kind of help you put a face to a name. So we're just gonna do some quick introductions, and I'll start. I'm Vanessa Benavidez. I am a 42-year-old single mom of an amazing 11-year-old little girl. I'm originally born and raised in New York City, but I've been in Miami now for almost 20 years. And I have a 20-plus career in social justice and poverty issues, which are very important to me. So that's me. Cheryl, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm Cheryl Stoner, and I am the mom of 3 boys, and I'm an artist, so I'm very passionate about tapping into our creative power, the freedom of self-expression, and just bridging connection. Nirmala.
Awesome. So I'm Nirmala Natraj, and I'm a writer and a freelance editor. And I'm originally from California, but I'm living in New York now. And I'm also a theater artist and an activist. And I would say that I'm most passionate about helping to create and maintain spaces where collaboration and radical inclusivity and also the creation of beauty are just central to transformation, both personal and social.
Thank you. So that's a little bit about who we are. And so before we get into the core of the conversation, I'm just going to ask Cheryl to set the intention for the conversation.
Well, like all of our conversations, I just take a deep breath and setting the space for open and clear communication that's supported and respected, and that will serve the highest good for us and all of those out there that witness it.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into it. I'll just start by saying that also in the file sections of the garden page is the group manifesto, and I really, really encourage you all to take some time to read it. We worked really hard on that, and I really think it's a great, detailed overview of what it is that we're trying to create with this garden space that we've invited you into. So I really do recommend that you take a look at that if you can, but what we're hoping to do right now is maybe bring that to life a little bit and highlight some key aspects of it. So let's get into the conversation. So first, we wanted to talk a little bit about how the 3 of us met, how we came together, and sort of how we got to this point that we're at right now. So maybe Cheryl, you can start with giving, since you were the bridge that brought us all together, maybe you can start with how that came to be.
Sure. Well, I met Nirmala. I think we started talking first, and then I started talking more with Vanessa. We all kind of connected through a Goddess Empowerment Circle that was a group on Facebook. This was advertised kind of as a safe zone for women. So women were kind of breaking open in this space, being seen and held unconditionally. And a lot of the women really forged close relationships due to that in that space. And like any space, you kind of gravitate towards people that you just, something clicks. There's like an energetic tie or something that you need to explore. And we started around the election when everything, the social and political landscape started changing and it was so volatile. We connected kind of over private message to discuss it. And that's one of the ways that we kind of got revved up and going.
Yeah, I remember. I think we were in that group for several months before that conversation got started. And I know that
Yeah.
because that group wasn't about politics, we didn't feel that it was appropriate to share our thoughts on politics in that space. So we kind of took it offline. And so now, we kind of had these two things that we were both interested in, this whole sort of spiritual aspect of ourselves, but also this political aspect of ourselves. And that really came together. And then you, Cheryl and I started having that more political kind of conversation. And she indicated that her and Nirmala had been having similar conversations. And so Cheryl, being the bridge builder that she is, brought the three of us together.
Yeah. And, it was a really interesting experience for me, because I think around that time, I was really wanting to move away from social media and to become much more entrenched in my life and my community. I mean, particularly with the results of the election, and really understanding that community is something that's incredibly important to me. And I wanted to be much more actively involved in what was happening in my immediate environment, especially since I'm kind of a more recent New Yorker as well. And I think that what happened with the three of us was, for me, kind of this magical indication of when social media works really well, because we were really able to, and the three of us live in different states. We're from, very different experiences and walks of life, and yet we still manage to kind of meet at this intersection of like our passions and our interests. And just for the last several months, it's been this incredibly animated and deep and rewarding relationship that we've built and that we've forged. And it's like it continues to have ripple effects in my life. So I think that's something that's really important, how social media can kind of be this instigator of the change that we wish to create in our lives, just by building these relationships that are very deep and meaningful.
I'd like to interject and also say that I was feeling challenged on only so much of a percent of who I was being in that group that we all met in. And I think we were all kind of thirsty to explore more than that. The whole idea that, just you can emotionally support a woman. I found these groups that are out there all over the place to have very low diversity, and safe space or sanctuary is defined very rigidly and almost emotionally enabling to not take people to be accountable or challenge people. And I actually seek to be challenged. And because of our diversity and because of who we are and how we think and, the people that we are, we challenge each other, and it's good medicine. I love it.
Yeah, and I would, piggybacking on all of that, I would say, we were in this group together interacting, but not, so personally. The election happened, and that kind of took us together. We connected offline, really talking about politics and the election, and then that sort of led to us sharing how we felt we were missing something in that space, which then led to conversations about, what is safe space, and and what was it that we were looking for and missing, and this happened very organically over several months that this conversation started building. So do you guys want to talk a little bit about what it was that we were missing there, that or that whole concept of safe space, going in a little bit deeper into what you were talking about, Cheryl?
Yeah, Nirmala and Vanessa, please add to this. But what I was thinking of, my bullets that I felt were missing was diversity. These groups that I see out there tend to be like the white goddess, sisterhood, empowerment, feminine rising, tends to be very exclusive to who they're marketing themselves to. And again, it was the emotional enabling is holding people in their white fragility and non-accountability to real world issues. And I think we need involvement out in the world, because group think tanks and homogenous thought tend to hurt our individuation. And that's something I'm personally working on, is my autonomy. And I want to go into a space that supports having different thought and doing different things and challenging each other.
Yeah. And I think to add to what you're saying, Cheryl, I feel like what was missing in that particular group where the three of us met, and in a lot of groups, is a sense of authentic connection that's based on something much deeper than, oh, we're all here because we believe in the feminine rising and and we have common spiritual interests. I think that for the three of us, there was enough commonality so that we could come together and have a shared vocabulary. But I also feel like the places where we've all grown and challenged each other to grow are the places where there's maybe some disagreement, or maybe like just very different ways of looking at the same thing, where we've really had to kind of move outside of our comfort zone. And yet we've always encouraged each other to stay connected in the conversation when things may feel difficult or challenging, or when some of our more, insidious, internalized ideas about what's true and who we are come up. So for me, that's what I've always wanted, the kind of community where you're able to remain connected when you encounter these things that might normally break other communities apart, because they're just too fragile to withstand that kind of diversity.
And I think that's where the concept of what we've talked about a lot about safe space versus brave space, and how do you bring those two together? Because the group that we met in was very focused on being a safe space. And I think how safe space was defined in that setting is that no matter what you brought, we're going to see you and we're going to hold you in that space without judgment, without, and I think that's great. And I think that's beautiful. But I think for me personally, and obviously for the two of you, and I'm sure for others, it's like, there's a fine line there where just holding safe space can also be enabling. And not allowing you to grow and not pushing you to grow. Because for me, meaningful relationships are the ones that push me outside my comfort zone. And so, when the three of us started expanding our conversation beyond just the political arena, and started talking a little bit more about the concept of safe space, we, it's like you were saying, Nirmala, I felt, we first came together because we were coming together around our commonalities, but the more and more we talked and we started experiencing our differences, it was kind of like, I hadn't thought of it that way, or, your idea that really brushes up against a sensitive point of mine, and, but there was something magical happening, I think, that just kind of kept us in the conversation, kept the conversation very, it honored each of us while still pushing us outside of our comfort. So therein we had safe space for each other because we weren't judging each other. We weren't being disrespectful. We were honoring each other, but brave space because we were really pushing ourselves and each other outside our comfort zones and staying with difficult conversations. Because, we've had some really, really difficult conversations where, we call each other out on things, or we question certain things, and I think that those are my favorite conversations. It's not the one where we're agreeing on everything, Mm-hmm. So do you guys want to talk a little bit about how you feel about safe space versus brave space and what that means to you? Either one of you.
Nirmala, you want to go ahead?
Sure, yeah. And I mean, we've talked about safe versus brave spaces quite a bit. And I think, kind of like what you were alluding to, Vanessa, there needs to be a sense of safe space. And by that, I mean a foundation of trust and respect, a sense that you can bring your whole self into a conversation with full self-acceptance and acceptance of the other people who are present. I actually, I think as much as safe spaces have been kind of maligned as, you know, places where all of the special snowflakes gather, I think they're fundamental because we actually don't have very many of those safe spaces in our culture. So when people have the freedom to bring all of who they are, because we're so used to kind of cutting ourselves off and compartmentalizing, I think we create an opportunity for brave space and for growth beyond our comfort zone, for expansion into other perspectives that we might not be aware of. And I think those brave spaces are so important for what we're facing in our culture and our society. And we really need to be able to challenge ourselves.
Yes.
So that said, I think, you know, one of the words in our garden manifesto is sanctuary. And we think of the garden as being a sanctuary. And there's kind of, for me, there's like a sacred connotation to that word. Like you don't go into a sanctuary, you know, you don't go into the sanctuary with the intention of like littering or kind of just throwing all your shit out into the space. You go with an elevated sense of intention and energy. And I think that's also what the intersection of safe and brave space is. It's that kind of intention that you're putting into it. And I think that brave spaces are especially about kind of getting out of our sense of, you know, poor little me who's been victimized by the world, and really kind of questioning the labels that we place on ourselves and other people, and also coming into a place where we can create something that's brand new. And I think, you know, the metaphor of the garden, where we're not just going into a pretty place, but we're digging up the earth, we're planting seeds. There's a lot of emotional and physical exertion. That's what I think of as being the sanctuary we would like to create. So it's not just about escaping from your life. It's about coming in and saying, well, how can I respond to the context of my life in a constructive way and build something that's meaningful and that actually has application to what's happening in the rest of the world.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And I don't even necessarily think it's either or, like safe or brave space, and one's better than another. I don't know if I would have been able to hold brave space without my introduction to safe space, if that makes any sense. So gratitude for that group that we all met in. I feel like I, in some respects, have outgrown what I need, and I have to move into something different that challenges me more, and I actually start to practice.
Right. And I think, you know, when sanctuary was a word that came up a lot during our conversations. And, you know, I think one of the things that we talked about, which is in the manifesto, talks about being responsible for the energy that you bring to the space. You know, so it's not about showing up in the space and everybody in it has to provide you sanctuary. But,
Yes.
you know, it's that you come in there being sanctuary and being responsible for maintaining that feeling and environment, so that when there's a need for safe space and brave space, that you can offer that as well as benefit from that.
And that is such I think a big point about what I'm seeing trending like out in Facebook and these goddess empowerment circles, is they are very focused on me and what I need. And it's a bunch of, I mean, middle-class white women focus solely on their own improvement. And believing all it takes is that trickle-down spirituality that we've talked about, that somehow making themselves better is going to affect other people in a way that trickles down. And that's the idea that I think I've outgrown. I want to be accountable for more. I don't want to recycle wounding anymore. I don't want to be in denial of placating fragility anymore. I'm ready to work, and it doesn't have to be in huge ways. It can be in small daily awareness and small acts of kindness and progress that way. But I want to be held accountable for that. What I take out into the world outside of my navel gazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about, you know, Nirmala alluded to this a little bit, but to maybe go in just a little bit deeper on the whole concept of the ecosystem, which is a big part of the manifesto as well. And I think an early concept that we sort of plugged into before we ever had the idea of creating this garden. You talked about the whole concept of the ecosystem. Can you talk a little bit about that? Either one of you, but.
Sure. Yeah. So the ecosystem, I think, is very similar to the garden. It's kind of this metaphor of how there are all of these elements that come together, and each part is an integral aspect of the whole. So, and at the same time, we're all part of this like larger organism. So we can't look at ourselves as separate beings. Like we all have the capacity to affect each other in really, you know, both small and major ways. And I think that we also really connected looking at the ecosystem, considering the ecosystem as a part of something the three of us have called new activism, which I think, Cheryl, you sort of really beautifully described when you were last speaking. It's, to me, when I think of new activism, it's that intersection of, you know, like the personal and the larger, the global, and how those things come together and really create sort of new ways of being together and new ways of seeing the world. And I think it's also less about, I don't know about the two of you, but I would definitely consider myself a lifelong activist. And at the same time, I resist that label because I think there are certain connotations around what that means and who gets to be an activist and how it's done. And for me, new activism is about really consciously noticing the ecosystem, noticing the environment in which you are, what's your place in it, how do you contribute to it, how does it enter you, how do you enter it, and how do you tend it, and how do you do that best?
Yeah, beautiful. I wrote, it's in the manifesto, that ideas for sustainment, and I just pulled it up because they're like charting growth variances and kindly valuing seed diversity, and it's a lot of metaphor, but it's so much your root systems aren't strangling other root systems, but it's also pulling from beneath and taking in what's above and being conscious of your surroundings. Rising feminine, politics, social landscape, it's all a balance. It's inward, outward, it's the macro, micro, and that's what I am looking to do, and is balance. And that's what I found with you guys in our relationship. So amazing is that I'm not enmeshed in your realities, but I take them in, and you hear me and I hear you, and I find myself more balanced in this this circle that leaves my autonomy to be my own, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, so we've been having these conversations almost on a daily basis, I would say, since since the election. And again, we would walk away from so many of our conversations just sort of feeling like, okay, something magical just happened here, or, oh my God, that was an amazing conversation. And so, you know, as we kept going, we really felt like all these things were happening just with us three, the ecosystem, safe and brave space, pushing beyond our boundaries, you know, this new activism happening. You know, we were becoming better people individually. We were going out and doing better things. And then that's sort of where this idea of creating this group, the garden, came about, because we felt like we wanted to offer this and recreate it on a broader scale, or at least try to. So maybe I think that we're coming close to the end of this chat. So maybe we can close with some thoughts about what our vision is going forward for the garden, and what we would like to see happen over the next several months or whatever.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Nirmala.
Okay, thanks. So two of the words that really come to mind from this conversation are interconnectedness and nourishment. And I think what I would really love is for the people in the garden to experience interconnectedness and nourishment in their own lives. And it was always our intention to kind of create this virtual space where people could come in and they would have like almost a laboratory where they can explore and, you know, work with all these different elements and kind of put them together and see what's combustible and to see what's, you know, what works really, really well. and to then be able to take that out into their lives in a very tangible way. So I would really love for people to experience how this kind of space can be really integral to allowing them to go out into their worlds and to affect change in a way that's not forced, but that's really organic. It's just a part of who they are and how they carry themselves in the world.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to meet and connect, collaborate with more people that could entertain an idea they might disagree with, and hear it, and pose an idea that I might disagree with so I can hear it. And this is kind of like a refuge, a point where we can do these things and be respectful. So it takes a certain kind of member who's ready to have hard conversations and be available, okay with being wrong, maybe, like, not there's right or wrong, but to be in spaces that aren't so divisive. And I think as admins and members that it's important that we all learn with and from each other how to do that better, because that's what the world needs from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both of you. I don't really have too much to add. I mean, I would just say that, you know, personally, I'm hungry for, you know, we push each other on different topics, but I would love, now that's almost made me hungry for even more perspectives, you know what I mean? And to expand myself even further. So I'm really hoping that people in the group take the opportunity to share their views and their perspectives and allow us the opportunity to, you know, dialogue around it and see how, you know, we can each grow through that process. So, and mostly just, you know, for everybody to take from it what they need, and leave behind what they can offer. And you know, that's how I hope we grow over the next however long. So I do think we just have a couple of minutes left. So any parting thoughts or comments that anyone wants to make?
No, I just say thanks for being here.
Yeah, so thank you everyone. I hope you enjoyed the first video. Again, we hope to have other videos where we dive in on deeper on various topics. So we'll be talking to you all more about that. But right now I would just invite you to share with us any comments that you have on this video, on the group, on anything, what sanctuary means to you, what safe and brave space means to you, anything that you want to share with us about this video or anything else really. So that's it. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.